Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Harris Cooper, no relation that I know of, where we discuss work culture. Harris, at the time a GS-15 with the U.S. government. We talked about culture and people and having a relationship and environment where people function well together. We discussed one part where he did have to confront a couple, as it turned out, married couple, who went through a process. They didn't like the measures he was recommending, but had to stick by what was the standard. But Marty, I know you were not able to participate in the podcast because of a previous commitment, but let me pose to you, if you were in a situation, in a work environment where the supervisor, somebody said, Marty, can I talk with you? At that moment, you know it's about something that maybe you just sense. It's about needing a correction. But let's just assume the tone of voice and the environment, everything was correct, it was good, but you just felt that, okay, this is about something about your performance, something about showing up on time or something. Tell me what, for your personality, which I know you're very relationally oriented and you are somewhat of a behind the scenes or an introverted type person, what is a good environment for you and people like you?
Well, Ron, I can relate a story. When we were stationed at Homestead, I worked in the legal office. There was a time when, not every day, but a few days here and there, I would be a little bit late, not a lot. I don't know for what reason, because we didn't live that far from the base. But anyway, the deputy general counsel came to me and said, I need to talk to you about something. And she goes, we really like your work, but you've been late off and on throughout some days. Is there anything going on? And her tone was very soft. She had good tonality. She had a good process of talking to me. She was very caring because she said, we really like it and we know you like your job. And I did. I loved my job. I don't know what the reason was, but anyway, she talked to me and I felt like she really cared and was trying to figure out if there was something going on, personally or just with the job, people, whatever it was. After that, I took her acceptance of me and I determined not to be late again.
You see, that's a perfect way to respond to a person who has the right tone, the right environment, and yes, you change your standards because this person knew that you had a good work ethic, but maybe something is keeping you from arriving to work on time. That's what Harris and I discussed in this podcast. Let's listen to this, and we know very well that sometimes confronting people can be very uneasy, but Harris talks about how he confronts people and how we can uphold the standards of the workplace that need to be upheld. Let's listen and learn together. Harris, it is good to have you with us. And Harris Cooper speaking with Ron Cooper. And so whether we have a family tie somewhere in the background, who knows? But Harris, it is great to have you with us. And you served in one capacity and still serve the U.S. Navy and at Naval Air Station Patuxent River, and appreciate your service to our country. I am 22 years Air Force, and so we've each served our country. But Harris, at Naval Air Station Patuxent River, you headed a very large aircraft maintenance organization, and you created a culture, and very interested in digging into that a little bit further. But Harris, welcome aboard. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Harris, let's talk about culture. It is my perspective, and I'm very interested in comparing your insights. People come to or leave an organization simply because of people. The organization is either right or it's not. And so I don't know whether you would agree with that premise, but I'm just very interested in what your thoughts are about culture and as relates to people.
Well, as you stated earlier, I worked almost 39 years for the government, and I had a couple of lessons that I learned early on in life that I tried to make sure that they were part of my everyday business dealings. Two of those were, number one, what I think most of our mothers taught us was the golden rule: treat everybody the way we want to be treated. And number two, it's a prayer of serenity. If you're not familiar with the prayer of serenity, basically what it says is, God, grant me the ability to focus on the things that I can affect. The ones that I can affect, I turn them over to you, and give me the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And so, and those were the kind of things that I would portray to the people that came to work for me while I was in a management role, and the things that I basically tried to portray to any of my managers whenever I wasn't in a manager role. So, and then early on, I ended up working for a supervisor that he was an older gentleman. So, I looked at him as a very wise man. And whenever I first sat down with him, he said, I have two rules. So number one, do your job. Number two, keep me out of trouble. And when you stop and think about it, that's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And so therefore, I carried that with me as well through my almost 39 years. And that I would tell the people that came to work for me, I said, I have the two rules. And I said, if you have a problem understanding what your job is, let's sit down and talk about it.
I think that's great. I am aware of the prayer of serenity, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I'll just say, as a point of reference, Marty and I are faith-based, and so we do believe that everyone deserves to be heard, and so yes to that. But I'm going to believe, Harris, you led maybe a fairly wide diversity of people. Would that be a fair statement?
Oh yeah, I was like I said, I told you I was responsible at one point in my career for all the capability and capacity for the Navy and Marines in their repair of aircraft. And so I had people at Patuxent River Naval Air Station. I had people at Cherry Point Marine Corps Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida, San Diego. So yeah, you could say it was pretty diverse, from the country in North Carolina to the beaches in Florida to the beaches in San Diego. So yeah.
Well, now in the context of diversity, it's not only diversity of people, thoughts, and age and so forth, but you supervise people at geographically dislocated organizations. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I wasn't a direct supervisor, of course, for the people at the lower levels, but the there were levels at those bases that reported to me.
But at least I would say that those who were not geographically located, you probably developed procedures, processes that applied to each one of those organizations.
Yes, I did. The last thing that I did before retiring was I actually reestablished the apprenticeship programs for those facilities. So yeah, you talk. Well, I'm dealing with younger kids at that point, and trying to impart some of my wisdom on them, and at the same time realize that they bring something to the table as well.
So that right there is a very interesting topic. I know there's some organizations that are in the, I'm going to use the term generational change, that there's some of us boomers who are choosing to live a little bit different life, and we're going to hand the reins over, pass the baton to the younger generation, some of which have different values. You and I were invented long before the internet and social media and
Yep.
cell phones were invented. And so we are taking on the values of, the habits of those younger than us. How do you, I know that's a very, very all-encompassing type question, but how do you work that type of diversity?
You have to approach it with an open mind. You have to approach it with the thought pattern that I don't know everything. As you stated, we were around before computers, and I know enough about computers to be dangerous. I have to depend on some of those younger folks to make sure my computer doesn't crash.
Yep.
So yeah, you have to realize that you don't know everything, and that just because you did something one way doesn't mean it can't be done another way and reach the same goal. So yeah,
Well,
you
I
have
think
to have an open mind.
that's a very important premise right there, that I, even though I'm responsible for and I lead this organization, I can learn from you. Is that just kind of an approach you took?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever I was in a managerial position, I always made sure that my people knew that my door was open. Come in and talk about work. Come in and talk about your personal life. If you got personal issues that you need to bounce something off of, another thing I would do is, I was in an office environment for a good part of that. I would make sure that I walked around the office. I did my best to do it at least once a day. Didn't always succeed, as you know. Sometimes priorities overtake you. But it wasn't just walking around the office. I would stop and talk to those individuals. I'd try to remember a little something about their personal life that we could have a conversation about. And that breaks down a lot of barriers for people who work for you, is for them to know that you're approachable and know that you're willing to listen to what it is they have to say.
I think what you just said is extremely important from my perspective. You walk around, you talk to people, and it's not just fill the square, got to say a few words to you and, adios type thing. But I'm guessing, Harris, you actually took the time to learn to know people. I personally believe, as well as you may believe as well, there is a continuum between home and work. When things are going right at home, there's a reasonable chance you'll arrive happy to work. If things are going well at work, there's a reasonable chance I can send you home happy, but the converse applies as well. I, as a leader, never want to impose on you at the home, but yet I want you to know I'm always available to talk with you at home about any challenges you may have. Do you have a similar approach?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, I developed what I'll call, cautiously, I will call friendships. It's one thing to be friendly, and that's more or less what I was trying to do, than it is to be friends. And sometimes it can be dangerous getting too friendly with folks that work for you, but at the same time, you have to be approachable. So there's a fine line there sometimes. And you as a manager, you as an individual who wants to lead an organization, you have to understand where those boundaries are at. And the boundaries might be different for different folks. You got some folks that are responsible enough, they can handle the friendship. I've got a number of those people that I'm still friends with today that worked for me. But at the same time, they understood where the boundaries were at. And as long as the folks that are working for you understand those boundaries and you do a good job at portraying what those boundaries are, yeah, like I said, it's about people. If people trust you, if people like you, if they feel like you've got their best interest at heart, they'll perform. You don't have to worry about it.
Yes, I want to approach a little bit further. Yes, boundaries. And I'm going to put the boundaries in the context of it's not necessarily the high fence, but I use the term, or at least I'm generating the thought, Harris, you will be fair with everybody, but that does not necessarily mean equal, absolutely equal, the same with everybody. In other words, you say, giving some person some latitude to do something maybe exactly right for that person, but something very different for another person. They're not the same treatment, but yet they're equal, I guess, in the context of performance. Well, you may word that a little bit differently, but can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Well, I can do better than that. I can give you an example. I had a husband-wife team that worked for me. They worked in two separate areas, but ultimately they fell under me. And I had told all my folks, and I was dealing with GS-13 at the DoD level. And what I would tell them, I said, you act like a professional, I treat you like one. And this husband-wife team, and also told them, I'll back up, also told everybody, I said, I'm not a clock watcher. You have a job to do, I expect you to do it. We have core hours that you need to be here. But at the same time, we have some leniency. And so this husband-wife team took it upon themselves. They were showing up at 8:30 in the morning, and they were gone by 3:30. Well, you do the math, that doesn't add up.
Right.
So it took a few instances of me getting their supervisors to say something to them, but they finally got the message. And it was amazing how many people in the office that were not part of that knew what was going on, saw what was going on, and they actually came to me after the fact and said, thank you. And, that was treating them fairly and not necessarily the same as everybody else. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. I totally agree with you. Would it be a fair statement, Harris, if we were to overlook, like you're this couple, if you were to overlook that and at least mentally excuse it, that then can be interpreted as the lower standard for your organization?
Oh yeah, definitely. Other people see what's going on. There's very few people in life that are brave enough, boisterous enough, whatever term you want to put on it, to speak out about something that they see somebody else doing. But yet that thought's in their head. Oh, I see Joe over there. He can come in at 8 o'clock. Maybe I can come in at 8 o'clock when the work hours started at 7. Hey, I'll just slip out early today. I won't worry about it because Joe's getting away with it.
Oh, that's right on. Now, for some, the very, very uncomfortable topic of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of confrontation as not combative or argumentative. I just need to enforce the standard. And and I'm guessing, Harris, okay, you might have some sort of a statement. You're coming in later than, leaving earlier than. Can you tell me why that is? But then you want to learn from them. What I'm leading up to is it's not the hammer and sickle, I'm here to smash you kind of thing. I do want to learn why it is things are happening. And in the context of fairness, all right, well, maybe, but maybe to do things the way we do things here, to arrive on time and so forth, maybe you need to get to bed earlier or whatever it may be. But how do you approach confrontation?
Oh, very, very similar. I mean, a lot of it has to do with the way the approach is received. As you know, people have different personalities. You can sit down with one individual and just have a conversation like you and I are having here. There are other people you have to sit down and hopefully not start off that way, but through their body actions, through their verbal reactions, they will let you know that you're going to have to go a little bit different route. It can't just be a friendly conversation that, hey, this ain't right, blah, 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 blah. So that was the way I approached things. I always tried to approach it with the individual in mind. Another example would be a young man that let's just say I noticed he was away from his desk too much to be performing anything. And so, I brought his supervisor in. Hey, what are we getting out of this young man? Not enough. I said, wrong answer. So anyway, we brought him in the office and we sat him down and tried to talk to him. Hey, what's the issue? What can we do to help you? Blah, blah, blah. And he right away started to deflect. So at that point, I realized this can't be just a normal conversation. So I had to change my tactic. And at the end of the day, I told him, I said, at the end of the day, this is on you. This isn't on whether or not your supervisor is there or anything else going on. This is on you. We want you to succeed. We'll give you the tools to succeed. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to do it. And that was the way I approached it with him. And unfortunately, he didn't get the message. And I'll leave it at that.
No, and I clearly understand what you're saying with this. Harris, would it be fair to say that you take the time to think of and let's say mentally work through the individual before you confront this person, this person's personality is, and you can anticipate maybe whether this person will make a left turn, right turn, whatever. And what I'm leading up to, have you somewhat thought through mentally as much as you can what this conversation could be, and you have thought through at least a possibility of how you would respond to whatever that person's response is, that type of mental exercise before the confrontation?
Oh, definitely. And I'll add to that. You have to have in mind what's the outcome need to be. It can't be bring in and like say you have an individual that that you should be able to have a normal conversation with. At the end of the day, you still have to realize what the outcome needs to be. And if that general conversation can get you there, great. But if it can't, like I said with this other young man, then you have to change midstream and you have to get more forceful and do whatever. But then I definitely do what you're talking about, in that I try to think of how that individual will react, but at the same time, knowing that I have to reach point Z for the end of that conversation. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. Now, with an individual and they're not responding well to the dialogue, I'm going to use the term dialogue.
Mhm.
You may have already determined in your mind if your responses lead me to think you are definitely not going to reach the standard we are enforcing here. You may reach the point in the conversation that, well, I'll just have to tell you, it sounds to me like you choose not to abide by our standards. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, or some words of that effect. Is that somewhat what you have to be prepared to do?
Yeah. And working for the government, as I'm sure it's a little bit harder than that.
Yes, I do know.
But it's a process where you have to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's.
And so, I'm going to ask you to interject on very briefly,
No,
Harris.
no.
In that context where you are, I'll use the term somewhat lightly, where you're heavily regulated,
Mhm.
might you contact your HR folks
Oh, yeah.
to know exactly what the boundaries are, statutes, and so forth within which you have to work?
Yeah, the way it works, you can have your early conversations, but whenever it gets to the point where we now have to take the next step, it's gone beyond a verbal. It's gone beyond us sitting down and having a conversation. That would be what you definitely do. You get HR, find out what the options are, and work with HR to work towards either getting that individual back on track or letting that individual go. And of course, you do everything you can to see if you can get that individual back on track before you let them go.
And I'm sensing from you, Harris, your demeanor what you're saying to that person, perhaps non-verbally, is, I care about you, but we have an organization with standards, and should you choose not to come up to the standards, I'll try to help you. But if you still have the mindset you're going to be an individual, you do your own thing, then maybe you're just not going to fit well here. And you, in the context of government regulation and so forth, you know exactly what you're working within, those whatever those constraints are. Is that a fair summary of what your mindset is?
Yeah, you've hit it dead on. I mean, at the end of the day, we get paid to do a job. Hopefully we get paid to do a job we enjoy. Hopefully we get paid to do, or we get paid for what we do. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing that, you don't just get to sit there and collect a paycheck.
Yep. What I'm sensing from you, Harris, is you pretty clearly project a persona, an attitude. I care about you, and I care everything about you, but we do have standards here, and I hope we can work together to where I can inspire you to up level, if that's what the corrective term is, to up level your performance to reach our standards. But I care enough about you, I'm willing to work with you. And I'm going to believe that caring attitude is part of the culture that you create just through your persona of leadership.
It's funny you state it like that, because let's go back to that married couple.
Yep.
At some point, they both moved on to other jobs working for different people. And each one of them came back to me after the fact, sometime after the fact, but they did come back to me and say, man, I sure do miss working for you. Because at the end of the day, I think that my attitude carried forward, that I do care about you, but at the same time, we have a job to do.
Exactly. And I do think sometimes, Harris, it might be some amount of time later that by upholding the standards, we made the right choice, however difficult it is to do that in the context of confrontation. Again, I don't like to be combative or argumentative, but I need to speak with a resolve. The standard is. And so I certainly want to work with you. I want to be fair with you, but I'm not going to reduce the standard to whatever you think the work performance needs to be. And Harris, I'm going to believe that is pretty much core to the culture you created. It sounds like that couple came to realize, albeit it took a little bit of time, to say, Harris, you did right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we have standards. And if we compromise on those standards, what do we get? That's the question you have to ask yourself, because sometimes your standards may not be upholdable, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And at that point, you need to be smart enough to realize that and back off that standard a little bit. I'll make a statement you may have heard before. Sometimes the best performers make the worst supervisors.
Yes.
And that is because they think everybody should be able to work to their standard. I like to think that, in my younger days, I worked to a pretty good standard as well. And whenever I managed to get my first promotion off the floor, I was a machinist by trade. But when I got my first promotion off the floor, I made myself a promise: never forget where I came from. And to this day, some 40 years later, if I'm where some of those guys that I worked with on the floor are at, and I pick up the phone and say, let's go have a beer, what time, where? And that to me, I'm most proud of anything, is that, excuse me, those people still respect me enough to realize that I never forgot where I came from.
And that's very important. Maybe we'll bring this in for a landing with you, expounding on that a little bit. I'll never forget where I came from. Harris, were you born with the mindset of leadership talents and traits that you have, or would you say it's a learned skill, maybe through people association, reading, that you have evolved and grown to the state you're in? And some people think that, well, you're either born a leader or you're not. And I'm just curious what your insights are on that.
Well, to some degree, a little bit of both. I think being a leader is about your personality. um, uh, being being a little forward, or not being scared of stepping out. I was never afraid to step out. I learned a lot from my father. My father taught me a lot about being a leader. One of the things my father taught me and my brother early on, he said, I don't care if you're a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger you can be. And so, like, I'll go back on my career. I started off as an apprentice machinist. That's about as low as you can get.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And like I said, I worked myself up to where I retired as a GS-15. Did I aspire to that from the day I went in? No. If you'd have told me, heck, within the first 10 years of my career that would be where I would end up, I'd ask you what you were smoking. But the thing was that I would get into a job, and then I would realize, hey, I can do the next level. And so, I always went into a job with a leader mentality, but also with a follower mentality as well. I didn't want to burn any bridges. I didn't want to make anybody mad without good cause. So yeah, I think leadership is a combination of your environment that you grew up in and your personality.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I think there's some of us who might say, I want to be, and I'm going to follow those who are where I want to be. I'll learn how to do what I want to do. I just know that I hope to do something. And it sounds like you were able to look at those who were where you wanted to be, and you became that person.
Well, and again, I look for the best qualities in those people, not just the fact that they were where I was at,
Yep.
or
And
where I
so,
wanted to be, I should say.
oh, no, I think that's exactly what it is. You look for those character traits. You look for the positive things that got them to where they are, and you build on that, it sounds like.
Yeah, too often in my career, I've seen people that either one, get promoted too young, or number two, are promoted beyond their capabilities.
And right there. Yep.
And
There are some people that you've got time and grade, therefore we're going to promote you, not necessarily based on ability.
right. And when that happens, those people in leadership tend to cover up for their inequities by being overly harsh, overly hard on people. That to me is as dangerous to an organization as anything I can think of.
I solely, wholly agree with you. Harris, congratulations on where you are, but I'm a believer that the best is yet to come, even yet, no matter where we are in life. I appreciate and I thank you for the inspiration you have been, you are to others. And culture is, I believe, caring about other people and having the right talents, but yet the attributes and the character qualities that inspire people to be their very best.
Thank you for having me, and don't be a stranger. Look forward to future conversations.
I appreciate that, Harris, and let's continue the dialogue. We appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.